Griffin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all so much for being here today. It reminds me of the somewhat famous quote that a government big enough to give you everything you need is powerful enough to take everything you have. And yeah, that sort of goes to your quote earlier when you were talking about the government culture that we're dealing with here. I think what we've seen described here and in the previous hearing is a distant, ever-growing, almost unlimited federal government that in many instances means well, but it is unresponsive to people that live thousands of miles away. And the bigger it grows, the less accountable it is. And I think this is another example of that. I want to clarify a couple of things. There have been a lot of facts thrown around, and there are a lot of myths as well. First of all, there was no surge in 501c4 applications in 2010. We've heard, I know some people get talking points and they read them and they don't really know what they mean, but the Washington Post and the Atlantic and many others have reported there was no surge in 501c4 applications in 2010. It just didn't happen. And we're not just talking about C4s. As Mr. Young pointed out, we're talking about C3s. I'm holding a lawsuit that relates to Z Street. They're trying to get organized, and they are a pro-Israel group. And I've got the questionnaire that they were sent. And the IRS, they were just trying to get 501c3 status, okay? Not C4. The question, does your organization support the existence of the land of Israel? Describe your organization's religious belief system toward the land of Israel. It's unbelievable. And, you know, what's interesting, it's pointed out here, that in the New York Times, a senior State Department official was talking about some of the charitable groups active in the Middle East, and he said that the funding for these groups is a problem because it's unhelpful to the efforts we're trying to make. Is there a connection? I don't know, but it's outrageous that they would ask these sorts of things of groups. You know, I would you heard some other members quote the investigation of the Inspector General. I would point out, as some others have, it was an audit. There were no emails requested, no depositions. It just scratched the surface. And a lot of people love to cite it. Well, they didn't cite the fact that it said that conservative groups were targeted. That's why you're here. It's not a debate over the law. It's the fact that some groups were given a pass and some groups weren't. That's what this is all about, despite the fact that some people say, oh, it's about terminology, or we haven't given them the right terms. Or do you really need training to know that you don't ask Americans what they're praying about? I mean, seriously. Do you really need training to know that you don't approach a group and try to get a deal that they won't protest Planned Parenthood? It's unbelievable. If you have to write that type of stuff in the statute, then we're just out of luck, folks. That's just common sense. And you know, I think this is another great argument for tax reform. If you want to reduce the abuse and the power of the IRS, we need to reduce the complexity of the tax code that they enforce every day. And I would just say, in closing, that I would encourage you to explore all of your options against this government. I would encourage you to look at 42 U.S.C. 1983, which allows you to sue when your rights have been violated. It is particularly First Amendment rights. And I would just encourage you, obviously, you have your own lawyers, but when citizens are treated the way you have been, I think you ought to use every tool that you can to hold this government accountable. We're going to do our job here, but this is a federal government that agency after agency after agency is out of control. And I appreciate y'all being brave and being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renacci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And